Morning, John. Haven't seen your face in a while. Good to see you. We're gonna have to practice muting and unmuting to make sure everybody. How many times? It's so funny. Every day someone is talking to themselves. I can't hear you. Okay, we've got 1 minute. Let's see.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, commissioners, good morning. Welcome back to the Statewide Commission on Recycling Markets and Curbside Recycling meeting, the first one of our second year of convening, and the first meeting after our first final report was due to the legislature, which we did submit early. And thank you again to all the commissioners for your hard work last year in getting all of that done. We'll go ahead and start off with the call to order, the roll call, and establishment of a quorum. So we have called the meeting to order, and we're going to go ahead and do a roll call. So I'll call out commissioner names, starting with Commissioner Bouchard.
Present.
And Commissioner Cadena? Commissioner Davis?
Yes.
Great. Commissioner Dell?
Present.
Commissioner Donlevy? He told me he was going to be on vacation, so I think we're going to miss him today. Commissioner Ferrante, I think I saw you.
Yeah, here. Hi.
And Commissioner Kalpikoff?
Here.
Welcome back and our condolences. Lost your father. Commissioner Lapis? I think we're missing Commissioner Lapis. Commissioner Medrano? I see you there. Commissioner Medrano?
I'm here.
Oh,
Good
there
morning.
you go. Thank you. Good morning. Commissioner Segura?
Good morning.
Good morning. Myself, Heidi Sanborn, Commissioner Schneider, is she on? Okay, so we're missing Commissioner Schneider. Commissioner Sky, I believe he is missing. He's on vacation, so that's 4. Commissioner Toyota is here. And Commissioner Valle, Vice Chair. 5 people missing, and Commissioner Ward.
Here.
Okay, so we have a 16-member commission, and I just see Commissioner Lapis has arrived, so we're missing 4 of our 16. We still have a quorum. So thank you very much for being here. We'll go ahead to agenda item number 2.
Sorry, good morning. I'm on too.
Good morning. Yep, we saw you. Thanks. So this is to review and potentially approve the meeting minutes of our last meeting from June 16th. Has everyone had a chance, hopefully, to look these over? And if you're okay with these meeting minutes, we can go ahead and take a motion to approve.
Move to approve, and I note that Commissioner Schneider.
Oh, wonderful. She's here. All right. So we're only short 3 commissioners. Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Great. All commissioners, thumbs up. Everybody good? Is there anybody who abstains or opposes? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and approve the meeting minutes from our last meeting. Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item number 3. This is the public comment review for items that are not on the agenda. The comments will be limited to 1 minute or 150 words. And to CalRecycle staff, do we have any public comments?
Yes, thank you. We have 2 comments today. The first one is from Doreen Smith Power. It says, we need to have a quarterly recycling report that states how at least the CRV that is dropped off is being reprocessed and sanitized to be reused. The public needs to be aware that recycling has not stopped. Who is working with who to continue the common goal of not burning our plastic and cans be processing the material to be reused. And the second comment is from Tim Shesick at the American Chemistry Council, and it says, the Polypropylene Recycling Coalition has awarded another round of grant funding, $1.8 million, allowing more recycling programs to provide curbside polypropylene collection. The latest round of funding includes a recipient here in California. More information can be found at the following link. And those two comments are both published on the CalRecycle public comment portal, and you could get the link from there.
Great, thank you very much. And Mr. Shostak, it would be great to know when that plant is going to be up and running. I suspect it takes a while. Thank you for that. And then we can go ahead and move on, if those are the only comments that we have, to agenda item number 4, which is the response to the July report. And before we get into that, I just want to say how eternally grateful I am to Commissioner Ward. He has stayed right on top of this, working with CalRecycle staff, making sure it was accessible. It's on the website. The commission files in the Google Docs is organized, so hopefully you can all easily grab everything. And the amount of hours he put in is really monumental, and I just want to publicly thank him. Couldn't have done it without you, Ted. So, yeah, go ahead if you want to say something.
All a team effort, and it's all about the policies, really. So everybody worked together on it.
So I'll just start quickly by saying, we wanted to give this space to all of you to report back what you've heard and to share what we might have all seen in the media. I think one of the biggest responses we got was from the Association of Plastics Recyclers concerned. We've heard from Tim Shostak this morning, they're still concerned about polypropylene not making the cut and recyclable. But overall, I can tell you the responses I've gotten. I've spoken to the Solid Waste Association of North America on a national webinar, to the California Resource Recycling Association just a week or two ago, and to many other groups that have asked for specific presentations. I think it was LA City, Southern California one has asked for a presentation. I'm sure all of you have been getting asked. I think, Ted, you've spoken to the Regional Council of Rural Counties and shared your PowerPoint, which we're very grateful for, that we can all use. But I encourage all of you, again, to speak with your commissioner hat on, to present the facts of the report and all of that, and then always just being careful to switch hats and being public about that when you are in your advocacy mode as your individual, representing your individual groups and organizations. But the response I've gotten is quite impressed with the amount of work the commission did. Some people have told me this is the most readable, most impactful report they have seen in a very long time, and on this issue, and that it cut to the chase. And so I just want to give you feedback, and of course, the legislature has taken up some of our recommendations, and there are bills in place still that are playing off of our recommendations. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to all of you. And one of the vice chair is saying that the public is not able to get on the line. Please ask staff to double check. So CalRecycle staff, can you please make sure everybody can get on this?
Chair Sanborn, I think it's been remedied. It's all good.
Oh, has it? Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, great. Is there any other commissioners that would like to speak to what they've heard back? Any concerns, things that people want us to take up that maybe we missed, changes to existing policy recommendations, things that you want to share? I'm not seeing any hands. Yes, one. Go ahead, Commissioner Ward.
Some of the feedback I've gotten from the Global Recycling Council of CRRA, for example, was that they both appreciated the policy format, but also found it frustrating, and that they were interested in pursuing policy ideas without necessarily getting into the weeds of the details of specific legislation. And so I'm open to trying to change the policy format and adjust it to try to make it as useful to everybody. But the initial challenge that I was set up with was to essentially try to communicate to legislative staff. So if the commission would like to sort of change that direction or restructure the way we do policies, I'm open to that. But I'm just interested in trying to be as effective as possible.
Okay. Are there any other comments or any feedback you'd like to share with the group, Commissioner Ferrante?
Yeah, Ted, I'm just not, can you explain that a little more? I'm not entirely sure what you mean about that. I mean, are you talking about legislative staff being target audience, and how do we better communicate these policy proposals that would need legislation to them? Or I didn't fully understand what you're saying.
So to me, the report has two core audiences, especially the legislator who adopted it and put it forth, and the latest legislative staff who are considering additional bills, and then agency staff who are responsible for implementing these policies. So to me, those are kind of the core target audiences. But a lot of the people who are in the field, they don't necessarily know the details of the law that things are operating under. So they say, make reuse more prominent. So for instance, the Global Recycling Council had a zero waste vision that had several points that were, good overarching slogans, but they were, translating them to policy takes a lot of work, and trying to figure out how you would translate that into proposed legislation is the work that the legislative staff needs done. And so that's kind of how I structured the policy format. But for a person who just wants to say, well, there should be more reuse, it's hard to structure that into the policy proposal format that we have. Or for instance, on deconstruction, how do you go from the point of saying there should be more deconstruction in the way that we manage buildings at their end of life, and how do you make that into an actual policy proposal? This seemed to be a lot of the challenge of people who wanted to engage with.
Okay, so it sounds like maybe some of these proposals need greater context. I mean, I think some of them did, in like the background section or the overview section where we discussed what the current landscape is in California and why this is necessary, or why similar proposals or policies may not have been successful in the past. I mean, would that be helpful to give greater context to some of these proposals, to explain how we got there?
I can't speak for the folks who wanted to say who didn't engage, but the feedback I was getting is that they were really interested in trying to offer more sort of slogan-based proposals. This is where the policy focus should be more than where it is now, rather than getting into the details of this is the way the current regulations and legislation needs to be. That was.
All right, thanks.
I will add that as a volunteer commission, with the number of hours we've all dedicated to this, I think it would be very helpful for the people that have concerns about our format, or because to some people it'll be too complicated and other people won't be enough. And so we are balancing all of that, trying to find the middle with our amount of time that we can afford to this. So I would suggest to people, if you have suggestions on changes, it's very helpful to us if you can actually give us very specific recommendations to the changes of the format instead of us kind of guessing, because our plates are already extremely full and we don't want to guess wrong. And I see that Commissioner Delt is raising her hand.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. I can't believe it's September. Can you? Okay. I got some feedback, and I think it's really good because I do love data and facts, which it seems like we were just all over the map, and that we had a lot of our time taken up by certain little parts of the waste stream that actually only account for a small amount of the waste stream, but because it's very important to industry to maintain labels and recyclability labels on those things, we spent so much time and energy on those, and we didn't really like prioritize the big picture of, you know, what's really the top forms of contamination? How do we stop that? What are the biggest amounts of waste? You know, the biggest amounts that aren't recyclable, that we don't have markets for, that we should try to develop markets for, right? Or substitute to other products that we couldn't have legitimately have markets for. And so I think I'd like to make a suggestion, and I'll end up probably volunteering to do it, but somehow looking at CalRecycle's most recent waste characterization data and really, you know, begin to prioritize this in terms of volumes, or volumes or weights, right? Rather than spending so much time on, you know, things that only account for 5% of the plastics waste stream or something. So that was a comment I got back.
Okay, thank you. And I think we did talk about this, that we were tasked with many things. One thing is hitting the target of 75% reduction. The other one's greenhouse gas reductions and reduction of contamination. So again, we have a lot of different goals, and that would require different responses. So it's kind of a lot for this commission. I totally understand what they're saying. And I think we should, and I have referred to in some of the meetings the breakdown of the waste characterization report and how it plays into how we were picking things, at least in the Market Development Committee. Commissioner Schneider, I think you're next.
Thank you, Chair. I think I agree with what's been said. And over our vacation, I was trying to figure out what could I contribute in our new year. But when at the CRA conference, I talked to a number of people about what they would like to see us work on. And a number of the items that they pulled up or gave me are already in the old report. So what I think I take from that is everybody is very busy, and there are many policies and they cover many areas, and nobody really looked at it. Now, putting on my local government hat, I can tell you that from an elected official's perspective, we're still dealing with the pandemic. Each month we have to decide if we're opening up the city or closing the city or opening City Hall. So no one's really spent any time with this in my circle, my elected official circle, with the exception of organics, because they know it's coming, and they know that, at least in my county, most of the cities have banned disposable food service things, and most of that, with one exception, that goes into effect in March of next year. So those are the two things they're working on. And I have to say it's my bad too, because I didn't push myself into the big JPA that covers 2/3 of the city. I just kind of talked to the three of us who have South City garbage. So I think it's just a lot to take in. And we weren't tasked with holding meetings specifically about these policies, but maybe I definitely agree that we should prioritize them. And then when we get to the agenda item on what to do next, I keep thinking that what can we expect local government and their contractors to do as we come out of the pandemic? And if we could pick 5 things, then we can push that 5 things out. I know this was targeted for making legislation in Sacramento, but I look at it through the local government lens. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Ferrante. I think you're next.
Thanks. Yeah, Ann's comment made me think of this, although maybe it's better suited for the next agenda item. I just thought maybe we should review the best way for members of the public to bring recommendations forward to us. And you know, I know we have the portal, and we put out requests for submitting proposals, but if somebody wants to bring something to the commission or present to the commission, you know, what's the best process for that?
Okay, well, if they put comments in the chat that they'd like to present to us, or email me or CalRecycle or Vice Chair, any of us really, if they know any of you, to just say, hey, I'd like to get on the agenda and discuss this, and then you can bring it to me. We're happy to do that. There's no, I don't think, one right way or better way. It all gets to us. So if anybody would like to speak to us or bring a policy idea, you can speak to any of us, put it in the portal, in the chat, and we're happy to consider that and see if we can refer it to a committee. Okay, well, are there any other thoughts from the commissioners on this, on response to our report? I can say that I did have a suggestion that we do a presentation, the vice chair and I, to the legislative staff about the report. COVID cranked back up again. People in the Capitol got COVID through the vaccine and everything shut down again. And we're in the middle of a very, very busy, crazy session still. So it didn't happen yet. But I think after the break, that's something I think Vice Chair and I should really work with, especially Senator Eggman, who was the author of the bill, to see if we can get that on the agenda to do a lunch and learn sort of thing for the staff to really go through this report with all of them so they really know what's in it. If anybody has any concerns about that or doesn't think that's a good idea, please let me know. But that's where I plan. Okay, I see some thumbs up. So that's where I plan to go at this point. And Commissioner Affronte, did you? No?
Yeah, thanks. I've had another comment for something that Ann said. You know, we did, Ann, take the approach that we were developing legislation, right, or proposals for legislation. But that's not actually what we needed or had to do. And so, I mean, if you want to talk about other ways outside of developing bills that we can push these goals and things that would be helpful to local government, I think that's a great idea.
Great. And Commissioner Osigura?
Yeah, Chair Sanborn. I mean, I think, you know, I want to congratulate all commissioners. And I want to say, I think that, you know, a broad, I think, idea or, you know, I look at the commission as a catalyst for legislation, a catalyst for thought leadership, a catalyst for ideas. And so I believe as the report has come out, and there are pieces of legislation they're going through right now, right, that are a consequence or potential consequence of the thought leadership from the commission. But I think it provides, I think we should be, once again, a catalyst, and I think we have been successful, and we should be proud of not just of ourselves, but of listening to different folks and ideas, and are we being that catalyst? And I think for me, success is it specifically how a format of a document looks or how many pages it has? Is, you know, to me, is that important? Sure. But more important is, are we being a catalyst? And I think the answer to that is yes. And we have to continue to ensure that we are a forum to generate, once again, ideas for legislation, ideas for new thoughts. Bring people together and get those folks to express themselves so we can create better public policy. So that would be just my comment.
Great, thank you. I agree completely. And I really do say this every time I speak, that how incredibly proud I am of everybody on this commission for the amount of work we all put in, how much we listened with open minds and really actively listened. And sometimes we didn't agree with certain recommendations, but we certainly listened and understood what they were saying before we made a decision. And that's all people can ask, really. So if there are not any more comments on this agenda item number 4, we're running early, but I know a lot of us have a lot of bills moving right now and need to get to other meetings. So I don't want to delay the meeting from moving. And if we can end early, I think we'd all appreciate it. I know a lot of us are also watching South Lake Tahoe with a lot of concern, like to hopefully that fire's going to avoid downtown. We can go ahead and move on to agenda item number 5 then, which is the discussion of the committees, committee assignments, and report frequency. And this, I thought that it would be time to just reassess real quickly with all of you how we set ourselves up to operate last year. Now that we've gone through a full year, I think we agreed, we pushed really hard at the beginning to get good ideas out there, and now we need to pull back. And so the 1 meeting a month, 3 hours a meeting for the full commission. And we have the 4 committees and then multiple 2-person committees. Is that the way you still want to structure Are there certain ideas you think that we missed? Do you want to see reports? I personally think it's a good idea to give them a report at the beginning of the session, legislative session in December. If there's any updates to existing recommendations or any new recommendations that we would like them to take up that session. If we wait for July, it's too late for that year, and it really doesn't happen for another at least 6 to 8 months. So that was one thought I had, is that I'd like to do another update to the report if we have any changes. If not, we could just give them a letter in December as an interim for next year's, because we're only required to do one a year. So any and all of those things are open for discussion. And I see Commissioner Ward, you'd like to say something.
Thank you. I generally support the idea of a January or July frequency on the report. And on the committee assignments, I think it would be best to discuss this perhaps after we discuss priorities for next year. But because I think they're somewhat interrelated. But without that, I think they're just fine.
Does anybody think that we don't need to change anything, or we've got it set up structurally the right way to get good debate, input, and policy advice? Commissioner Davis.
I'm not sure about continuing the structure of the committees. I found there was a lot of overlap and discussions at one committee that precluded discussions in another committee, or and then we ended up with these two-person committees that further limited at least what I felt we could bring up in committee. So I'm not sure, and I kind of agree with Ted that let's maybe talk about what our priorities are and then figure out how best to address them. I think the committee structure was important to get us focused. I'm just not sure going forward that it's the best structure. I would prefer smaller committees focused on topics where people who have knowledge or a compelling interest in the topic could focus on it, rather than these broader categories that don't really isolate topics. As far as frequency, I think the frequency discussion needs to go hand in hand with how we report out. And if we're only reporting to the legislature, that's one thing. But I think we all realize that there's other interests in what we're doing. So I think we should give some consideration as we adopt a policy, as we agree that, okay, this is a policy recommendation or a general policy, that we release it at that point and not wait and release it in a bundle every 6 months. I think that, part when you release the report with 30 recommendations, I think I heard earlier people were commenting we should have a recommendation on something that was already in there. So it's a lot to digest. I had to go back this morning because I wasn't sure if we, whether or not we had adopted a couple policies that came out of market development. So maybe the report frequency and using a different form of committee. It's not that hard to create standing committees around topics. It may be more work on cower cycle steps and something else to consider. I'm not wedded to the current structure, but if we want to continue it, we'll keep working on it.
Okay, Commissioner Lapis.
I actually had a very similar thought, and I apologize. I'm in the middle of something this morning, so I missed part of the earlier conversation, but very similar thought to what John said. I think the committees made sense in terms of trying to split up the scope of what the legislation told us to focus on. And I feel like we sort of did that in the first year, and now we need to look at what else we want to focus on and then divide the work based on that. Even if we end up with the same number of committees, it might not be the same structure. And I have an enthusiastic thumbs up from Ted, so just want to get that on the record. Ted strongly agrees. And then a different comment. and I apologize if this came up and I missed it. Have we talked about people coming off the commission and coming onto the commission? I know we have one opening because Eric left, but also I think it'd be good to create a process for, folks to be able to step off the commission as well.
Well, anybody can resign at any time.
Right, but I mean, it seems like we were sort of at a good breaking point, right, between years. So maybe once a year we could have some kind of, are you still interested in participating, or would you like to give somebody else an opportunity, and then do a solicitation for those open spots based on, what we need.
I would suggest that's not our authority. Cal EPA has the authority to make these appointments in Cal Recycle, and they were 2-year appointments, and that's what we all signed up for. So if somebody wants to resign early, that's between you and Cal Recycle.
I guess what makes you say that they're 2-year appointments?
That's the law. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what, I'm sorry, that was the letter that we got from Cal Recycle. I recall it very specifically saying we had 2-year appointments.
Okay, then I forgot about that. Then maybe this is a conversation for the end of this year, for who's interested in reapplying or something along those lines. I just,
I had
I mean,
requested,
What is your concern, Nick? I mean, I guess maybe you're saying if people aren't interested, and then you're saying people to reapply. So that's two complete different subjects.
I guess I'm just thinking that there are probably folks who are staying on because they feel like they signed up and it's their commitment and they have to, but they might have accomplished what they needed to in the first year, or they have other priorities now. That was kind of my thought. I'm not speaking about anybody specific. And if this is not an issue, then I'll not bring it up, I guess.
No, I think you make a good point in terms of if folks should feel that if they have other priorities, they can. I can imagine anyone has the ability to resign if they would like to. I just think also there's good representation on this commission with different folks, and I think it's a good balance of ideas, and I sure want to make sure that does not get impacted just by procedural changing of folks, if you will.
yeah, so my, if someone from Cal Recycle could get on, but my recollection, I was looking for the letter, I couldn't find it right now, but my recollection was the letter said we had 2-year appointments, and so it really is between you and Cal Recycle if you want to step down for whatever reason. I did ask that Cal Recycle report to us today if there were plans or to replace Commissioner Potashner going into the second year. Now would be the time to seat them. So we have their input from the beginning. Is there anyone from Cal Recycle who can speak to that?
Good morning, Commissioners. Good to see you all. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Heidi, thanks for the question. And just a reminder, the terms of the appointment is in the charter. So that's where you can find more information there. And what the charter currently reads is the term of appointment to the commission shall be no less than 2 years or is otherwise determined by Cal Recycle. So that's charter language, and that's where that is. And then, as you know, there's been a significant amount going on, and the director makes the appointment. She has a number of priorities right now. This is something that we're still looking at, and we'll hopefully have a more substantive update for you very soon. So thank you for the questions, and more to come.
Thank you for clarifying that. Charter, that's where it was. Thank you. Okay, so I think you've raised the issue, Nick. Now we have a little bit more information out there. But I think it's really not up to the commissioners to determine who's on the commission. It's really Cal Recycle. So we'll just keep asking for input as to whether they're going to replace Commissioner Potashner so we can get started, because I certainly would not like that person to have to miss meetings getting started in this new year. And I did hear comments that folks would like to start with the priorities, that would be helpful. So I would like to leave this item and move on to agenda item number 6, but leave it open that we can go back to 5 and reshuffle our committees if we wish to do that. So we'll go ahead now and move on to agenda item number 6, which is the commission priorities for the second year. And again, we wanted to leave it open to all of us to discuss, did we focus on the right things? Again, we were asked to focus on a lot of things. And we did a lot of big tasks we were asked to on defining recyclable, defining compostable, helping market development, increasing recycling rates. So I think we did a lot, and some of them we actually took off our plate, but we might want to amend them over time if there's new information. So I'll just leave it open again for discussion around priorities for this next year. I can start by saying one of the things I'm getting concerned about is the amount of green tech waste that is new, and there's two things that are coming that are relatively new. The cannabis industry waste, and also the, whether it's vaping products and all the packaging, and but just the industrial waste, believe it or not, from those facilities. We're seeing an increase in that hasn't been addressed really. And then also the green energy products that are going into homes, whether it's a battery wall. I don't think any of them have a take-back program. That's a large wall of batteries left in a home, and we're already starting to see them come back due to fire damage and what have you, and that's a lot of material. And then solar panels, big problem with solar panels. So that's something I'd like to see, and just addressing the entire e-waste program. Our program has never covered all electronics like other programs do around the world, and it's underfunded, and we need to get more stuff into that program or a program. So that's, to me, something I'd like to see addressed in this next year. Any other comments? I got a dart alarm, sorry. Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Chair Sanborn. So I really appreciate the idea of being able to talk about shifting what we're doing, because I totally agree with what Commissioner Lapis said about, we structured the report to try to address the legislation that we're addressing, and now we're open, but we're still advisors, and I think it's important to make sure that our advice is recognized. And I really liked and appreciated what Commissioner Oseguera said about us being a catalyst for ideas and connections. And so I'd really like to build on that and recognize that the Commission has a unique voice and perhaps a historic opportunity. And that currently there are about 20 companies that are responsible for over 55% of all single-use plastics in the world. And the U.S. is currently generating about 25 pounds of single-use plastics per person per year. So in the next 5 years, we're looking at the possibility of this global capacity for virgin plastics, single-use plastics production increasing by as much as 30%. So I think we have a kind of a unique moment, and that we might alter, rather than having all of our focus be on the legislature and the CalRecycle, possibly the Commission compose and send letters directly to those 20 companies, engaging them on what they're going to do to change their overall business model, because this idea of continuing to push single-use plastics on the global environment is killing us all. And the planet's on fire, and fracking gas is a major component of these things, and greenhouse gas production is not a small part of the overall plastics and single-use plastics industry, and we need to take these things head on. So my proposal is that we send letters directly to these companies and start to engage them on more obvious discussions. But because we are an advisory body, I don't think the answers should come back to this Commission, because we can't actually engage in the conversation. I think the answers to those letters need to go back to CalRecycle. So the content of such letters and the direction, I think, is up to the Commission, but I thought I'd throw that out as a concept.
That's very interesting. I think as long as it aligns with the goals of the Commission that we've been given, which is to reduce contamination, for example, I think it's a great idea to invite corporations in to meet with us and give us their, what symbols or what labeling would they like to see, or how could we work together to come up with a nationally harmonized program, or that's a great idea. I think we've got Commissioner Lapis and then Commissioner Schneider, please.
something that I'd like to see us focus on, and I'm not sure it's the whole committee or if it's just a single recommendation, is around enforcement and implementation, especially after hopefully we get some bills passed in the next 2 weeks. I'd love to have an in-depth conversation of how to make especially the greenwashing bills enforceable and implementable.
It's a great suggestion. Interesting, and we'd have to think if it fits under existing committees or not. Commissioner Schneider and then Dell.
Thank you, Chair. Is it presumptuous of us as just appointees to include in the December report what a review of our 20 recommendations, what hopefully of them became law and which didn't, and which of those are high priority? I will say I'm disappointed as an elected official that we still don't have more redemption centers. So if any higher office holder is hearing that, to me that was critical. That was critical in terms of getting money to low-income people during the pandemic. And that's the sad one, but maybe something will happen. But I haven't followed legislation as closely as Nick and you do to know what's happening by this Friday. The other comment I had when Ted was talking about plastics, and again, the things that local governments, because of other laws, have to pay attention to. And when I say local governments, we have lobbyists. We have the League of California Cities. And I will tell you that the main effort that we did at the LCC level was on housing, because the housing bills are hammering us at the local government level. So we have to get their attention if we really want them to also be lobbying in favor of zero waste or waste reduction. And one of the things that we are all looking at is how to pay for stormwater improvements and the litter that we have to recover from stormwater. So if we find our projects that also match other environmental aspects or other problems, that gives us additional partners to lobby these bills if they should become bills in the next session.
That's an excellent idea. I know that on our flushable wipes bill that our organization has co-authored or co-sponsored, that was a big partnership with the Association of Sanitation Agencies because of, it's not really as much a waste issue, it's a truth in labeling issue, but it's also very much a water issue. So,
very much a public works issue. My staff bought into it immediately and brought it up through their chain of command on lobbying. So that kind of, that's how we passed the plastic bag ban in California, was by getting many partners. So
yeah,
the more we can find more partners.
We had a lot of partners on pharmaceuticals for the same reason. Great idea. Okay, Commissioner Dell.
Well, I have to tip my hat to Commissioner Ward because as the most extreme environmental activist, I think, on this commission, you just out environmental activist me about taking on single-use plastics. But I do think it's time for corporate engagement, and I'm just going to leverage on what Commissioner Lapis said. It's time for enforcement. You may have read over this summer. I did not publicize this on the commission last year, but my NGO, the Last Beach Cleanup, has a lawsuit against TerraCycle and 8 product companies on what we are alleging to be deceptive labeling. And I'm not going to go into more detail on that, but you also know there's a lawsuit from Greenpeace on Walmart, Sierra Club on the beverage companies, an individual named Kathleen Smith on Keurig. And the reality, and I'm often quoted now as saying that these labels on plastic products, and I've got huge collections here to show and tell back to school, it is the wild, wild west of product labeling. Companies are slapping all types of labels on products without fear of enforcement. There's no sheriff in town. Regardless of what bills pass or don't pass, we need enforcement, and we know our state attorney generals are very busy. District attorneys are very busy. The FTC's never enforced the recyclable label law. And I would like to volunteer the label committee, because I think this is actually really where it fits very well, to be some sort of constructive, not an environmental activist, but a very constructive kind of body that could give feedback to corporations and raise this to public awareness, that there's blatantly incorrect labels on plastic products. This is an e-commerce bag from Costco of an apparel item. Another one from Target. Oh, sorry, Kohl's. I just bought this at Walmart this weekend. This is a foam cooler that says it's biodegradable, okay? These things are being sold right now. No one's watching. I feel like I'm the one, the professional shopper of creating, collections of these things. And I'd like to think, while some companies may deny it, especially ones who are using industry paid labels, but there are some companies, I would hope that if we bring this to their attention, they'll say, oh, we're going to address that, that massive supply chains are massive. We know this. I worked in supply chain for apparel. They're massive. And I'd like to think there are companies who would take action to improve these labels. But until it's brought to their attention, it's not going to happen. Thank you.
Great. And Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, I like the idea of working with the industry. Legislation is one thing, but I think to the extent that we can bridge where industry claims they want to be and where they are, that's an important focus for us. I'll always bring the market development aspect, and but there's a concept called what time is this place? It's an old planning principle that, you're here and you want to be over here. How do you get there, right? How do you bridge that gap? You can work backwards and try to lay it out. There's lots of strategies to do that. But I had a phone call during the break the last couple of months from Frog Hollow Farm in Alcrochese. Some of you probably know or know of. Had one of his communication people call me to find out what packaging they should be using. They're now entering into more retail outlets, and so they need a different packaging than direct sales in farmers markets. And I didn't have an answer for them. Is it compostable packaging? Is it PET thermoform, recycled PET thermoform, which is what they're using? I don't have an answer. What do you tell someone whose business it is to sell fresh produce to people, what they should be doing besides loose? And it doesn't work for them because theirs is branded. So I think, we do need to have that focus as well as end up where we want to be. So the two things that come to mind are the initiatives that I keep reading about from APR, from Recycle Partnership, even ACC, pledging to make their products recyclable, to recover them, make sure they're recovered at high rates, and to incorporate minimum content. Some articles say that the spike in prices for plastic grades is driven by voluntary minimum content. I don't know. But I think we need to explore that and in the context of where they are. And if they want to be, 100% recycled content, 100% recyclable, 100% recovered, then okay, how do we get there? How do we retrofit MERS? What do we tell people? How do we label the products that are not recyclable? So I think, to me, that's a market development focus, but it touches, again, it's that issue of trying to work inside boxes, right? But I'm fine working in the box right now and try to recover stuff that can be recovered rather than send it to landfills. And then the other thing that I have on my list of I think we do need to focus on is under SB 1383, that's a big topic with people in my world. And one of the big topics there is the whole procurement issue that is going to explode beginning next year. And I think, we haven't, at least from the market development standpoint, I haven't heard the discussion around that, building uses. I know the organics committee spent a lot of time on it, but I think there's some real issues coming up, and they're, you can see it coming right now, where cities are going to be required to go out and purchase compost that's already being sold to farmers. And, you know, what is the impact? What's the consequence of diverting the material that's already being sold and putting it someplace where we don't have a use? But what are we going to tell people? So those are the two topics, Chair, that I'm most focused on. One is kind of that immediate market development issue around the plastics and all the commitments that I'm reading from industry groups. And then secondly, the organic procurement requirements that are looming just 3-4 months away from us.
Thank you, Vice Chair Valle, and then Commissioner Lapis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that John and other commissioners have brought up some very good issues. We do not, in the state, have any enforcement capacity or ability when it comes to labeling, for example, product advertising, false advertising, misleading the public, etc. We also do not have any people working at a level other than CalRecycle, but they don't have the capacity to do anything other than enforce AB 2020, which is the bottle bill. And they're restricted in terms of what they can do in terms of enforcement by checking on processors and recyclers and, in some cases, customers who bring material out of state. As a commission, I would hope that we look a little bit more globally and strategically to talk about the issues that Commissioner Dell is talking about, so that we have the ability to recommend to the state that CalRecycle's role needs to be expanded way beyond what it's currently restricted to. I use the word restricted deliberately. There is no mechanism other than this commission that will allow us to publicly vent the violations of the plastics industry and other people who are not pulling their weight or paying their fair share of doing the right thing to save our environment, to reduce emissions, and to educate the consumer and to keep us on the right track. Other than the commission, and we don't have the capacity or the power to do any of those things. We can't enforce, we can't push, we can't put money forward, we can't even suggest any specifics that will translate into action. We just hope that through the legislative process, that somebody will pick up an item and then get behind it and then push it, and then we have to go work through it like pushing rocks up a mountain. And that's very difficult to do, is what we know. So I think that one of the recommendations that we as a commission should look at collectively is how do we move from discussion, raising topics, bringing issues forward, to real action and enforcement so that we can do the right thing. California is poised to do the right thing, given all of the current circumstances in our environment and all the things that are happening with consumers, the lack of redemption centers in the state. We're still at a nickel when everybody else is at dime. We're still using single-use plastics for water and consuming them and throwing them away, thinking that's okay. That gives a false impression to the consumer that all of this stuff is fine. We need to call people out and not be afraid to do it. And this commission could be the mechanism to do that. So I would propose that we begin to seriously think about thinking outside of the box and bringing forward some real concrete recommendations with teeth in them that will take a look at all these issues and just do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think it's going to be hard because, you know, we'll get a read of the temperature of the legislature in the next 2 weeks because I'll decide what's going to go to the governor next Friday. And that will tell us really how hard they're willing to push on some of this stuff. So
I don't disagree. I'm just thinking,
yeah,
as we move into our next year, this could be a global topic that we should discuss.
totally agree. And I'll skip you, Commissioner Lapis, and go to Toyota first since she hasn't been heard yet, and then we'll go back to you. Commissioner Toyota?
Yeah, I feel like all this is really good conversation and all these, but I feel like it's still kind of disjointed. Like we're talking about all these pieces again, and and they're really important. But I think to bring them together, I would really suggest that we pull out more of our talk about the circular economy and the donut economy, or the donut economy from the report, because everything that we're talking about is a piece in making that donut model work. And I think that if we pull it together in that concept, that it'll flow a lot better and people will be able to kind of pull this together in a better way. When we talk about working with the industry, that's really important. But there's no, where are we trying to go? I think that we really need to pull in that model and say, we want to make this a donut model. That's the goal. How are we going to get there? Now, what are you going to do? I don't really care about what you're doing now, honestly, as we're this far from making a donut model. It's pretty broad. How do we get to that point? And I think that pulling that out, maybe pulling our policies, if we even broke out the model into where does enforcement fit, where does this, and what pieces are we missing, it might just help people understand what we're doing and pull it together and keep us also kind of focused on a specific goal.
Okay, so you're suggesting that we develop, like, are we shooting for a circular economy / donut model economic system, and then if that's the path, and
that's
how do we align with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And pulling that out and through our reports, and
yeah, and since we've got a new Office of Innovation and Circular Economy coming, it might be interesting discussion too. There was a public comment. We'll let Commissioner Lapis go again, and then we'll go to the public comment, please.
I think those are really good points. And I actually wanted to go back to something John said on the procurement. I wish we had gone into a little bit more detail on procurement last time in terms of, I think that there's an opportunity to create more pathways for 1383 procurement for local governments. And, something we've talked about here and there, but I think a single proposal would help lead to a bill. And so I want to second that recommendation by John. Specifically, to put a finer point on it, something I've thought about for a long time is how do we create a system where local governments can facilitate procurement in carbon farming systems to count for their 1383 goals. So we're not stuck with using, just all the compost in city parks. Because I'm not sure that's the highest and best use, and I'm not sure that's helping to develop the markets we need for 1383. So I just want to second John's recommendation.
So just to put a fine point on that, so the Organics Committee, that sounds like it's very organics centric, could do an entire focus really on procurement, right, for that sort of stuff. And because there's ways to slice it. It's by topic area. We could get back to procurement, but then it's at procurement for all the materials in kind of organics or the other materials, or, I guess I'm just trying to figure out how you want to organize this, or if the existing committee structure could still deal with it. But anyway.
I feel like it could. I feel like this is one that probably would fall into you're right. This is an organics committee issue. Or if you did want to restructure everything, you could do procurement, and as a subset of that, you have the state procurement and recycled content, and then you have organics procurement and 1383. You kind of go either way. But you're right, the existing structure would still work. I just want to make sure we
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Get into
and
it.
then why don't we hear the public comment, and then we'll go to Commissioner, and I'll ask for other commissioners if they want to weigh in before we go back to people who've already spoken. Public comment, please.
Shirley Frericks at Waste Not, Nevada County, and it says, first, kudos for the many recommendations that have resulted in legislative bills. I look forward to seeing the recap of what passed and what did not, plus what needs further work. One place I suggest we focus on is the plastics industry, since I see they are out in force against the plastic-free bills. How can I help? Thank you.
Okay, we'll be talking about that under the legislation item. And I'd like to go to Commissioner Medrano first, please.
Just briefly, I'm very supportive of the proposal from Commissioner Toyota. I think there is great momentum on the circular economy model and discussions at the CalRecycle level throughout the state. And if we focus our discussions on that, picking several items that are part of that model scheme as to address, I think it's going to actually solidify a lot of our current proposal and then further enhance what we want to do. So really supportive of that.
Great. And would you suggest that that be its own committee to focus on, or maybe as a commission we consider what the North
I think it could either be either way, but yeah, I think it was something that the commission could decide on. Could either be something that we could discuss at the market development committee, or yeah, maybe it's a 2 or 3 person or 2-person committee. It could be either way.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And then we can go back to commissioners. I'll just do one last call. Is there any other commissioner that hasn't been heard that would like to speak? Commissioner Schneider, and then we'll go back to Ward and Davis. Oh, and Kalbakoff. Good. Okay. So we'll do so Commissioner Schneider, Commissioner Kalbakoff.
Thank you. Not exactly sure where this fits, but again, another frustration of being an elected official and really having no idea what our service provider and our city is accomplishing in any of our climate change goals. So I talked to our city manager saying, I want an annual report. Back when I worked for the city of San Jose, all of our environmental goals, we followed up at the end of the fiscal year with an annual report and we had to prove our accomplishments in order to get budget for the next year. So that's what I'm trying to do at my own city level. I hope that with all of our policies in the future, it has that enforcement, which several of you, Nick, I don't want to exclude anyone, I firmly support you with enforcement. Without that annual report, to me, at least for the person who sets the budget for my city, there's no enforcement. So I'm just throwing that out there.
Mr. Kalbakoff?
Yeah, I just want to talk about the Organics Commission and maybe specifically the procurement that we had a little bit of discussion on. We left the Organics Commission in July with kind of a few priority items to discuss in this session, and one of them was 1383 and specifically the procurement policy in that bill. So, and there was a few other ones that we discussed and kind of in a group on addressing maybe some fixes or some getting a little bit more detail from CalRecycle on some of those policies in there. So that may be something that we can push forward on the Organics Commission.
Great, thank you. Good to know. Okay, so then we'll go back to Commissioner Davis and our Commissioner Ward and then Davis.
So what I'm hearing is that we have a few focuses on legislative issues regarding organics procurement, and I think there also should be some kind of focus specifically on restaurant food packaging. I think it's kind of a crux issue, and falling on the recycling or the compostable line, but it's an ongoing problem for pretty much every community across the state, and I think it deserves some focus. And then we've got some other actions that were discussed that were not exactly legislative, such as talking about the circular economy or posing letters to industry. So I'm not sure that we need to necessarily keep the same committee structure, and but I think we could refocus those same entities.
Great, and Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, back to the discussion about procurement. And I understand, the Organics Committee has a focus, market development has a focus. And there's items I would want to bring to the market development discussion. I'm not sure how to get it to the Organics Committee. So that's where I'm feeling constrained by the current system. Then it comes forward to the commission, and then they say, what about this? And what about this? And goes back to the committee, but it's this bouncing around.
I'm sorry, what's bouncing around?
Pardon?
What's bouncing around?
bouncing back and forth with the proposal. So, you know, I won't say, since I'm not on the committee, I won't see their deliberations. I can log in and listen, but I can't participate in their deliberations until they bring something to the commission. And then I can share my thoughts, and then it goes back to the committee, comes back again. I'm just thinking we need to find a way to make it more productive and utilize all the knowledge that's here most effectively at the commission. And so I just wanted to bring that up. It's great to ask Organics Committee to look at that issue. Can Market Development Committee look at the same issue and somehow we merge our thinking? That to me would be a lot more productive.
Okay, I have some thoughts on that, but we'll go to Commissioner Segura next, please.
So I guess maybe, Chair Sanborn, I just want to understand. So we're coming up with the different ideas for priorities. Are these going to be put in some sort of draft document that we all then are able to provide additional opinions on in the next session or in writing? Not understand. I mean, today we're not voting on all these priorities. Is that correct? We'll have some time to think through them.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. So I was thinking we'd have the discussion and then it's up to you. I'm generally not a big fan of spending all our time on process. But I did want to make sure that you're all comfortable that the big stuff we really want to tackle has a way to get to us in a timely and thoughtful way through the existing committee structure. I'm not sure I'm hearing that that's right. One of the thoughts I've had is that we do probably have, now we can not only thin down how many meetings we're having, but thin down the number of committees, because what I have heard multiple times is that people can't watch the other committees, and yet there's important presentations happening at those committees, and we don't have the bandwidth to record them all unless somebody else wants to start recording the committee meetings. That would be great, and sharing them with everybody to replay back, but often we can't do anymore. So I was thinking we might go down to 2 committees and the commission, and then have bigger discussions as a bigger group. Because I can tell you, CalRecycle does not have the bandwidth to do more smaller committees. That wouldn't work. They've already told us that. So I think we need to think about, now that we've got the big lay of the land done and a lot of the requirements met that we were given, how can we think broader and bigger and more as a bigger group and have less committees and less moving parts would be my recommendation. And I was hoping today to just get general thinking out there, because if we reconfigure and let's say we put, I've heard loud and clear, everybody wants to get to enforcement. We got a problem. There's, as Commissioner Dell says all the time, there is no sheriff in town when it comes to labels. It's the Wild West. People are being lied to. They throw everything, and that's contamination is one of the top priorities we were given to deal with. And we need to talk directly to the companies about how they're coming up with these labels, I think, and what decision-making process do they have that allows them to put, not only is it number 6 recyclable chasing arrows on that ice cooler, but it's biodegradable and has no microplastics. I don't know what world that's coming from, but I think we need to get to the bottom of it. And also start holding the retailers and bringing them in and saying, hey, you're buying all this stuff, you're selling this stuff, you have a responsibility to help us get truth out to the public as well. But what form do we do that? And I don't want it to be too small of a group, because these are really important conversations and people can't be everywhere all the time. So can we merge? I'm just going to throw out an idea. Can we do a committee that might be labeling media and enforcement, because I think one of the problems we're having now is there is no enforcement and labeling. That's pretty clear. Or people having to sue and go through a huge long court process, which takes way too long. And then maybe merging market development and recycling. Organics seems to be a very standalone, and you can always hit procurement in the organics. as Commissioner Kalpikoff said, they were already planning to do, but really not having more than 3 committees tops. I'd prefer if we can think of a way to get down to 2. And then that way most of us can be at these and really hear some of the input. And I'm very open to ideas, just wanted to start throwing some ideas out. Commissioner Dell. Or I guess it's, yeah, Commissioner Dell, were you next?
Yeah, I agree with you. Again, being probably the person most obsessed perhaps in the country on labels and are they correct or not, I think there's also a lot of problems with the compostable labels. And so actually the good news, on a positive note, I do think that biodegradable law that kudos if it was Californians Against Waste who got that put in a few years ago, that has actually stopped a lot of nonsense in California. My team and I constantly look on store shelves for deceptive labels, false labels, and you really actually don't see it too much. Now, we do see a lot of compostable labels, which are questionable without certifications. And then if 1201 passes, that's really going to change things. So I do volunteer to continue leading the label committee and turn it into a serious, serious kind of engagement and enforcement awareness with companies of please don't do this. Do you know you're doing this? And really prioritizing things. And then it could work both with obviously the recycling and the compost or organics management because there'll be labels with both. And we did work with them both last year. So I do think that's a good plan you brought up.
And Chair Simon, I think it's to head towards 2 committees. I think it's could be a goal. I think, as you mentioned, there is the implementation of SB 1383, a lot of conversation in terms of how to manage the organic materials. I think 3 committees is, I think, where I would feel comfortable that we could go down to. As you mentioned, market development, recycling as one, labeling, media enforcement, another. But organics, it is a tremendous focus. And we're right in the middle of implementation. How is it going to look like? What course correction needs to happen? I mean, there's a lot of, topics there. It's pretty broad. And so I think that's important to keep that one as a separate one.
And I'd actually say for the labeling and the enforcement, maybe it doesn't even have to be a committee. Maybe it's just a function of the overall commission, because if we do make this outreach and engagement, I can see that we'd want to get the whole commission, have a half an hour or 15 minutes on a meeting saying, okay, these are the labels we're going to talk to companies about. Does everyone agree? Sort of thing. And actually not create, maybe not have to have another monthly meeting. It does slow it all down. So we could actually just make it as a standing item for review on the main monthly commission meetings. And in terms of the education and outreach, it's really a Cal Recycle thing. We've tried to engage, and I've been waiting to set up another meeting when we come back, decide who's going to be on what committee. And we definitely give them, ideas and input, but that's also something that could be just part of the commission as a standing commission item to do.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is a general agreement, and let's take more input if people don't agree, but I think we'd all agree organics are their own thing, and they need to have a standing organics committee. We can merge recycling and market development and labeling, media, and enforcement, and then we'd have 3 committees. And then the commission could even really have a more robust discussion around having the circular economy be the North Star, if we wish to do that. I think we could put enforcement and implementation, we all agree, I think is very important. I mean, if we get good policy, but it's not enforced and there's no thoughtful implementation, I mean, I've personally passed bills that I'm beyond frustrated because the implementation didn't happen. And that's because enforcement wasn't working. So I think that has to all go, maybe we stitch that throughout and focus more on that this time, that when we give policy advice, we also give them advice on how are they going to enforcement, timely enforcement, and making sure there's money and ample oversight for the implementation of these programs, and that we even monitor the implementation of these programs. We can have that kind of scattered throughout the 3 committees. And I see there's a public comment, so we'll go ahead and we'll listen to that first, please.
The public comment is for agenda item number 5, and it is from Tim Shestek at the American Chemistry Council again. It says, would the commission consider making a recommendation to the legislator that the makeup of the commission be expanded to include representatives from entities such as material suppliers, consumer brand companies, packaging producers, advanced recycling technology providers, and others that can bring an important perspective to future conversations. An advisory committee just convened in Washington State to look at policies around recycled content in plastic packaging, includes a diverse set of stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Did anyone have any thoughts on Mr. Shestek's comment, Commissioner Lapis?
Yeah, this came up a few times when we were working on the legislation to create the commission. We very intentionally wanted it to be a commission that's representative of California curbside recyclers, local governments, and the environmental community, because there's so many other venues that have everybody. And especially when it comes to what is and isn't getting recycled, we wanted that to be a reflection of the real life experience of the folks running recycling programs in California. So I would not be comfortable with that as a recommendation or as a bill, as much as I love my friend Tim.
Okay, Commissioner Davis?
Yeah, on that topic, I guess, and then I did want to circle back, but on the topic of including industry groups and other stakeholders, I think we should do that continually through our discussions, and I think we've done that to a large extent, but it would be really hard to say which industry group, which plastic industry group, which does plastic prevail over cans or glass or paper, and suddenly we'd have a commission the size of the legislature. So I don't know. And then there are omnibus groups like ISRI. I think including them in the discussion is important. And as Nick said, our focus remains on curbside programs and market development. And certainly I'm going to continue to push to have the input from the industry groups on market development issues. And hope we can find a way to work together. On the organics question, I think, there are, I'm a zone administrator, recycling market development zone. Manuel's zone administrator. Deborah's a zone administrator. My zone just saw our 4th fully permitted compost facility go through planning commission approval 2 weeks ago, 4 of them, okay, 2 in 1 city. So I work on those topics, and again, I just hope we can find a way that we can have input besides a truncated presentation to the commission. One way that we might think about, and it's a different approach, there's a Robert's Rules of Order concept called a committee of the whole. And you can do work, we could do work within the commission that amounts to committee work. It might involve a second meeting focused on topics rather than the format that we use for these, but avoid proliferation of committee meetings. A committee of the whole could even work without the necessity of having a quorum until the committee is ready to vote on something. So there's a workaround that might benefit, or we stick with 2 or 3 committees as we talked about. I heard Commissioner Dell basically allude to working within the committee of the whole, where you bring bring topics around enforcement or labeling here rather than set up a separate committee structure. I'm mindful that we have a market development committee meeting scheduled for the 13th, and that I need to get an agenda out after this meeting. So I'm going to be, I'll be curious to see where we go with this discussion by the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments on Tim Shestak's comment? Okay, I'll just say that it seems to me that in most groups that I see, the front end of the system, the producers, et cetera, have a lot of money and a lot of influence and a lot of voice. And this is the back end of the system saying, we need a voice and this is our place to have this discussion with their input. So I would propose that we keep it the way it is for now, but ensure that we're inviting people here and we're getting their input. Plus, I just can't imagine having a commissioner bigger than 17 people. It's just, especially if we're expected to have consensus votes. That's just, that would pretty much, I think, stop progress. Be very difficult. Okay, so I'm going to make a proposal and then see if anybody wants to follow along or if you want to make a different recommendation. But my proposal, there's two ideas I'm having right now after Commissioner Davis just spoke. One is that we have 2 meetings a month of the commission. One would be the regular commission meeting, and the second one would be committee of the whole, to have big discussions with big producer groups, et cetera. And maybe that we do that together, and then that would, I mean, we could do that and then have 2 committees, which would be, one would have to be organics, the other would do the rest. I don't know if that would work. But the other thought is we just do those committees of the whole when we need them, based on a discussion item that we might have that we think, yeah, I see thumbs up for that. So maybe we do a committee of the whole whenever we really feel that everybody needs to be here for an in-depth discussion, and we go down to the 3 committees we discussed. And I see some nodding heads. So I guess if I'll throw that out as a proposal. So again, we still meet once a month as a commission for 3 hours. If we need a whole discussion of the group, we do ad hoc, like separate meetings we could schedule for committees of the whole. And then we go down to 3 committees. So it'd be labeling, media and enforcement, merging market development and recycling, and having organics remain standalone. And we stitch throughout all of our work, enforcement and implementation and procurement. Does that capture what we've all been discussing? Is there anyone that would? Yeah, thumbs up. I see a thumb up from the vice chair. Thumbs up. Okay, is there anybody?
I'm just curious, and I think it's terrific that Commissioner Davis and I are starting out the year in agreement on things. I'm just not sure that we should have, I'm happy to lead the label committee, right? But there's only 5 people. Then we're going to have to start to set up those meetings ahead of having these meetings and the labeling / enforcement. And I actually think that it should be I'm throwing out the idea of just having a standing commission section, and I volunteer to organize stuff to get it ready to bring to the commission, and I can get one-on-one input, right? One-on-one input, that's allowed, and then just have something ready for the commission each time for 15 minutes to say yes, no, let's do that, because otherwise to have a separate label committee meeting and go over and do those things, set agendas, have CalRecycle help us with a whole nother meeting, and then come back and basically do the same thing again, I think actually would just be duplicative. So I'm wondering, and I think we're all interested in this issue, right? Mm-hmm. Right. And it covers organics and so on, and right? So I'm just curious what people's thoughts are of just having that as sort of a standing function as part of the commission instead of a separate committee.
I actually like that because that committee was pretty small anyway, and I think this is being elevated to a higher level, and probably all the commissioners when it comes to labeling of organics or labeling of everything else, it applies to all of us, and it crosses contamination and many of the goals that we've had. So I think, so I can amend the proposal to say
And then
that.
one more point to your other point, I think, and I hope somebody else will volunteer, and I don't know who it would be, but to your point on implementation, this is actually really important, and that could be a standing thing as well, of a report on the different things. There's an old rigid container law that I've never understood. Was it even really implemented? And so if we're getting these new bills in, 881, needs a signature. Is there somebody that could raise their hand to sort of monitor overall implementation and sort of report on that and where their problems might be?
Okay, so I think that can get, again, the implementation, I'm thinking would be stitched through everything, and that we can look at old laws, what did or did not get enforced and implemented correctly, and why, to make sure we don't make recommendations or make awareness to everybody what was missing in previous bills that had led to no enforcement and no proper implementation. What was the problem there? Because that's how we all learn from what happened in the other bills. So, okay, amended proposal. So we have Organics Committee, and we have the merging Market Development and Recycling Committee, and we pull into every commission meeting a standing agenda item on labeling, public education, and enforcement. And Jan would prepare that section. We can even have Commissioner Dell run that section of the meeting, which would take be a lot of relief for Vice Chair and I to make sure that that detail is there for the meeting.
And then I think for education, we should maybe just have a standing thing for Cal Recycle. If we're only going to be meeting once a month, we should have a standing time slot for Cal Recycle to come and give us an update on their outreach program for 5 minutes.
Okay. Is there anyone who would like to second that or have comments on this idea? Commissioner Davis?
I do like the idea. I just want to be sure that we had time for a report from the other two standing committees and not miss that opportunity again, so that we can all keep up with discussions and not just a topic list, but actually, what was discussed. And
yeah. No, that would absolutely, we want to make sure all the commissioners hear what was discussed at those meetings. And it would be easier, I think, for all of us to track if we have only two committees too.
Yeah, and to affirm what Jan just said, the Cal Recycle outreach, for those who haven't heard the presentations or don't recall, they're going to be focusing on what materials are recyclable curbside in California. It's a statewide outreach around those materials. So it definitely plays on topics that we've been dealing with.
Okay, I'm going to take a few more comments, and then we can, if we decide that this is the way we want to go, then we'll go back to agenda item 5, and we will literally reshuffle the deck on commissioners and which committee you would be on, et cetera. And we can figure out what to do with the meetings that have already been scheduled. So let's go ahead and hear from Commissioner Ward, please.
Actually, that was pretty much my comment. I just wanted to acknowledge that Commissioner Don Levy was chair of the Recycling Committee, and I don't want to have him have emotional distress saying, oh, your committee was combined with another and you no longer are chair of it. So, and everybody should be able to choose if they, with this reshuffling, if they want to be on a different committee. That seems entirely appropriate. And then finally, to wrap up on the policy item, I'd like to, since I didn't hear any statements of objection, I'd like to propose the idea of on drafting a letter for review at a future meeting to possibly go to those primary companies that are producing plastics that are used in single-use items.
Okay, that's a separate, we'll hold the letter on for a minute. Okay, so it sounds like everybody's good with this proposal, so I'll just quickly repeat it again. So we're going to merge market development and recycling. We're going to keep organics, and we're going to put labeling, media, and enforcement into the agenda. We'll obviously have the committees have on every standing agenda of the commission report out. If we decide we need to have a separate full committee meeting or commission meeting, which would be a committee of the whole, we will schedule those as needed for big presentations and things that everybody wants to partake in. So if that's the structure, we can agree on that, and then we can go back and make assignments and then decide what to do with the meetings that were already scheduled for the committees. Does that work for everybody? Is everybody okay with that? Kind of okay? Yes, okay?
We just have to make sure that we let the chairs know, and then should we let them decide who's going to chair or do it by volunteer for these committees?
I think the committees should decide for themselves who's going to chair, if everybody's okay with that. That's how we did it last time. It seemed to work pretty well.
Okay.
I think, Chair, I mean, we have now the Market Development and Recycling Committee. They have their first meeting, correct? And at the meeting, I mean, they make the decisions on the new chair, the new sub chair, and the participants. And then, for example, the organics, if it's the only committee left, then really who else wants to join that one to participate, correct? So, I mean, it's really also a time management issue for folks, right? Do you have the time resource to participate in them, and those that do not?
Right. So is everybody okay with this proposal? Because if not, speak now. Okay, so this is how we're going to do it. So now we go back and say, we've got the Organics Committee. We've got Commissioners Cadena, Ferrante, Kalpakoff as chair, Lapis, Osigura, Sky, and Ward, who is currently vice chair. I assume all of you would like to stay on that committee. Now, speak up. And then would anybody else like to join the Organics Committee? A hand up for Commissioner Davis. So we're going to add Commissioner Davis to that committee. Is there anybody else who'd like to go to Organics? Commissioner Dell? She would also like to be on the Organics Committee. Very good. Okay.
Heidi, how many members is that? Because we can't have a quorum of the commission.
So that would be, let's see, adding to Organics. So Cadena, Ferrante, Kalpakoff, Lapis, Osigura, Sky, Ward, Dell, and who else? Davis. So that's 9. We have 15 currently.
I'll take my name off. No problem.
Okay. All right. So we can add Davis. And then we're at 8 of 16. So it's not a quorum. Thank you for pointing that out. Great. So that's our new Organics Committee. Now, we're all going to do the labeling one. So then the next one is merging of market development and recycling. And our current market development committee is Davis, Medrano, Sanborn, Schneider, and Toyota. There's 5 of us. And the recycling committee is Bouchard, Dell, Dunleavy, Ferrante, Kalpakoff, Lapis, Osigura, and Valle. And there's a little bit of overlap. So this is a very important committee. If we cannot, hopefully we can get this down to 9 people or 8 people, unless we get a new commissioner, and then it can be 9 people. So is there anybody who is on that list who does not want to be on this merged committee anymore? See, this is where it might be difficult.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do the math real quick. I think we've got a problem. If we've got 17 commissioners and there's now 2 committees and you divide by 2, we're almost at a quorum, if assuming everybody wants to be one or another committee. I'm going to go ahead and suggest market development and recycling might need to say separate. Also, I think because Commissioner Dunleavy's not on the call today, and we're not including his voice in this, that this might be something we should wait to the next commission. But also, when you just do the math on that, it's you're going to either have to choose to be on one or the other almost.
Can I chime in? I am not, I raised this earlier. I don't think that we're not allowed to have a quorum on a committee. We're not allowed to have a quorum and not have a public meeting, but all these meetings are public.
Yeah, that sounds right to me too. Is Cal Recycle on? Can they verify that that's Zoe, or one of the
The quorum issue has to do with deliberations, and then you bring it to the commission and you deliberate it. But you could also use the committee of the whole structure and just anticipate that those who want to participate in a working committee of market development and recycling would attend as a committee of the whole.
Exactly. I mean, that's what I was saying. It's a committee of the whole. It's publicly noticed. Not everyone has to attend because the recommendations, the work product of the committee of the whole will also be brought to the full commission.
Yeah, that sounds right. And Zoe, I see that you're on. Can you verify we're getting this right?
We will check in with legal and just have an answer from them and get back to you as quickly as we can.
Okay. Well, why don't we just suggest then that market development and recycling merged is a committee of the whole, and then people don't all have to be there if they don't want to be there. But that, because it's such a big topic area. And that way we don't need to have 3 committees still. We can go down to 2. I've always...
Great suggestion on whoever made that. Because I mean, I think it's such an important topic that folks want to participate. I think it's important that participation is there.
And it does add to participation because I know a lot of us have wanted to, weigh in on certain committees and we couldn't. So.
Well, should we do that to both committees then? Because I actually would like to listen into organics. So when I've listened into committee before that I'm not a member of, I'm not allowed to make a I'm not allowed to make a comment at all. So maybe we should have both of them be this way.
I'm starting to think that too. So maybe that way everybody can actually be sitting as committee members at any of these meetings and ask questions. I actually really like that idea. Does that feel right to all of you? Yeah? Because then you don't have to be there. And so if your schedule doesn't allow it, you don't have to be there, but you could be there and you could be a participant like every other commissioner. I think that's a really good idea.
Okay. I think if these were in-person meetings and we had to deal with all the logistics of a public in-person meeting, it would be different. But with a go-to-meeting, it's really easy to have a public meeting.
Yeah, two thoughts. One is organizing the work, and so we need to think about how to structure it so it all doesn't fall to the commission chair to organize
It'll be fun.
through the committee of the whole. So.
No, I actually think this is going to be a lot easier on me too, because it's been harder for me because I don't have the bandwidth to be able to watch every single meeting, and I really need to know what's been going on. So I think this is going to be better actually for everybody. All right, good.
I think it's a good approach, but I do want to hear Zoe's feedback on, from CalRecycle perspective, because I think we're now talking about 3 meetings a month, although it's fewer committees. So overall it's fewer meetings, but
right. It's only going to be easier for them. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to okay, and please use the chat if you're going to raise your hand. So we're going to have now 2 committees of the whole, organics and recycling and market development. And then we're going to bring the labeling into the full commission meetings anyway. And that way everybody can participate in everything whenever you would like. So, and then those committees would vote on their chair and vice chair, the 2 of them. Or if it's committees of the whole, then that's on me, I guess, right? I would be chairing those? Or I don't care. I mean, whatever you think is best. Commissioner,
I think that's what I was raising. I'm not
gotcha.
sure. Yeah, I think it's more topically focused, but we need some feedback. We also need feedback on working subcommittees, and the notion that only 2 commissioners can be a part of a subcommittee, I think needs to be
that's a separate topic.
in the context of then having other input, and that opinion that we got about the subcommittee size, I think needs to be maybe relooked at.
What? I'm sorry, you're back to the 2-person committees?
No, within this committee of the whole, who's going to do the work? Who's going to write up the documents? Who's going to manage the work of the committee of the whole? So there's,
Can I ask a process question? Would I be able to hand the chairing of committee of the whole meeting over to vice chair or to someone else?
that's what I think, but again, I think CalRecycle needs to opine on that.
Okay. Well, either way, I think this works better for everybody because then everybody can participate in everything and there's less everything going on.
Yeah.
It's going to be easier probably for people to follow us and for us as well. But let's wait for CalRecycle. I mean, they'll have to get us some sort of, I'm sure the legal staff are going to noodle on this and get back to us pretty quickly. And then the vice chair and I can talk to them. But I would suggest that this is how we leave it. So now we've got to say, okay, do we want to keep the Market Development Committee September 13th, which is the Monday after next? And do we want that to be the first meeting of the whole committee of the whole for market development and recycling, or is that too soon and we should schedule another meeting and have that be later? Commissioner Schneider? Commissioner Schneider, did you have your hand up?
Sorry, Chair, it's actually in the style of meeting. So when we're done with this, my guess is we're operating under the governor's emergency orders, which expire in the next week or so, unless he extends it in terms of virtual meetings. So just something for us to think about.
Which, well, there's a very, very much bigger problem because if we have to meet in person, people are having to fly all over the state for these meetings, and I think it's going to dramatically shorten and slow down our work.
I absolutely agree. It's just something that we need to consider and ask CalRecycle because we can do this by nature of the emergency order.
It's really the only way, and I think we said that in the report too, that it actually worked for us because I don't see how we could have done this work without the emergency order. But we don't know, and we don't know when that will stop. Commissioner Lapis?
So I'm on another commission that's sort of governed by the same rules, and what Cal EPA told us there was basically exactly what Ann said, that if the order expires and is not replaced, we would no longer be able to meet. It would be a violation of the Brown Act to meet, or Bagley-Keene, I guess, not Brown Act. But I also, reading between the lines, got the impression that it is going to be extended, but maybe I was just reading too much into the comments.
And I think
John
I missed people. I know he's waving. Is it a process comment, John?
No, it's on this point. I was on the carpet committee for a number of years, and we met virtually. The Brown Act requires, if you do that, then each remote location has to post a notice of the meeting and be accessible to the public, which, you know, is limiting, but it's not, it doesn't require that everybody be in the same room. So the emergency lifted that noticing requirement. So Supervisor Valle could meet from his home or his office without having that meeting space open to the public to barge in. So that's the only limitation. But that carpet committee met for as long as I was on it, met regularly, virtually around that requirement. You just had to say where you were going to be, and it was posted. So.
Okay, that's a good point too. Commissioner Lapis or Schneider, I'm getting confused on order. Dell, was it?
Yeah, real quick. I mean, I think we can make a strong argument that California is a big state. We want to promote geographic diversity for Southern Californians who are far away from Sacramento and not incur unnecessary greenhouse gases to travel to Sacramento. Second point about the standing meeting that there's right now, I suggest that just be a market development committee. Again, Commissioner Dunleavy, who is the head of the recycling committee, is not on the call today. It may not work for his schedule, and that you just go ahead with that plan, and then we regroup following.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because we did schedule this meeting together. So we can,
And I'm also on the recycling committee, but not on market development, and I can't make September 13th, right? So like all of us weren't sort of pulled.
right. Well, we could also move that meeting back and make it a committee of the whole. And that would give everybody more time. And then I would be able to pull the board members, the commissioners that are missing to see if, or do a doodle poll to make sure we can get a date that works for everybody who wants to attend the committee of the whole for recycling and market development. And do it later in the month. I personally would like it later in the month because I think this session has been really long and exhausting, and I think everybody kind of could use a break. Any thoughts on that? If we just reschedule, Commissioner Davis?
I mean, the committee of the whole is basically like another commission meeting, so we could go back and do the third Wednesday, just kind of keep the same time slot, since Wednesday mornings apparently work. I don't know if the third Wednesday is a conflict for anybody.
So works for me. That would be the 15th. That would be the day after the election. So I don't know if everybody's going to be distracted. I'm happy to, is there anybody who would be opposed to setting it up the way we did before? So even though we were trying to get down to one with 3 committees or 4 committees, now we're getting down to 2 basically full commission meetings a month at the same schedule, with only the organics separate after that. So it would be, or actually, there would be committees of the whole. We could do the commission meeting on the 1st, and then on the 3rd Wednesday, we could do committee of the whole, market development and labeling, and then organics back to back. So people who wanted to stay could go right into organics. The people who wanted to do just one or the other could do just one or the other.
Yeah, you may need a longer time slot to do back-to-back committee meetings.
Well, we did do 4 hours for a while and do 8 to 12, so we could do 2 and 2.
Yeah.
On the second Wednesday or the 3rd Wednesday. Is there anyone that has a different idea on that, or would that work to start?
Heidi?
What if we did 2 and 2 with a lunch break in between? 10 to 12,
Like 10
1 to 3 or something.
Well, I can tell you statistics show people do not do their best thinking after lunch. Just saying.
It's just the 4 hours was a little hard to stay focused.
Well, we could do 2 with a half an hour break, and then 2, so it goes 10:30 to 12:30. Yeah, because that way, at least, the problem is if we're not chunking it, it's harder for people to make the time, I think.
Yeah, a half-hour break would be okay.
Okay. All right, we could always start earlier, but then we're getting into your childcare time, I think, so. Okay, so we're going to do 9 to 12, first Wednesday, keep that for the full commission meeting. And then the 3rd Wednesday, which would be the next one, is on the 15th. 8
Through the chair.
Yes, Commissioner Fennell?
Sorry. I have council meetings on the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays that often go till 1 o'clock in the morning. So, and I'm checking the calendar for September, for example. Doesn't matter, we're actually not having a council meeting on election day. But 8 o'clock, I can try to make it, but I sometimes can't get to sleep till 3 or 4 after a council meeting anyway.
It's the different weeks, though, because you're talking 2 and 4.
Yeah, it changes. Sometimes when we were at 8 o'clock and I'm still up at 4 o'clock, I make it, but I'm not really there. So, but I'm just one of 17 of us.
Okay, and it's committees of the whole, so you could be there or you don't have to be there. it would still
Okay.
be okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And hopefully we don't have many 1 o'clocks, but we do.
Well, and the good news too by doing this is our staff would be able to record all these. So you could all go back and look at the videos.
True. Thank you.
Uh-huh. So if we do 8 to 10, so the next one would be September 15th. We can start with Market Development and Recycling Committee or Committee of the Whole. And then we take a half an hour break and then go 10:30 to 12:30 for organics. So now we're only doing, well, it's 3 official meetings, but 2 days a month. I think hopefully that would be a lot better for people. And we'll have a lot better handle on everything going on in the commission, all of us. Okay, so I think that is the plan. And so the next meeting will be September 15th. So what I'm going to do is work with the chairs, the current chairs of those committees for the 15th and set up an agenda for that meeting, those 2 meetings right away. We'll have to work that through. And then we'll have Cal Recycle staff email you all and block that out. We'll have to change the website. And Commissioner Davis, did you want to then keep the Market Development Committee meeting on the 13th, or would you like to just move that to the 15th?
Yeah, I don't see any reason to keep that unless, or Mr. Medrano, Toyota, you're the committee members if you'd like it.
I don't see a need to keep it if we're going to be meeting the next couple of days after.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay.
I agree.
Oh, it sounds like the committee's agreeing. Okay, good. And then
So I'll
Commissioner,
let Cal Recycle staff know to pull that.
yep, that sounds good. Commissioner Ferrante?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I have the schedule right. We're going to do full commission meetings on the first Wednesday of the month, 9 to 12. And then the third Wednesday would be the committee of the whole meeting, 8 to 10 market development, 10:30 to 12:30 organics. Okay.
Exactly.
I can't make the 15th, but generally the third Wednesday works fine for me.
Okay. So we'll get that on.
And then Heidi, you'll send an invite right away because I hate, it gets, it gets onto calendars. If not, things get scheduled, as you know. I mean, so the sooner it goes out, the better.
I totally agree. I'm the same way. If it's not blocked, it gets filled up. And I think what we'll do is we'll just fill it up for the whole, all the way through this year, through June of next year. So it's blocked for all of you. We can always change it if we want to, but that way nobody risks missing it. So I'll work with Cal Recycle to get that done today. And I really want to thank you all. That was, again, a really kind of hard discussion to have on the fly, and we did it again. So thank you. That's a really good result, I think. Hopefully you all feel good about it. Okay, so with that, we were going to schedule a break at 11:20. I think we're close enough that we can just wrap this up if that's okay with all of you, unless you want to take a break. And we just keep going, yeah? Okay, because that'll give me more time to work with Cal Recycle, make sure all this stuff gets addressed quickly on the agenda. So we'll skip the break right now and move to agenda item number 7, which is the update and review of legislation. I did not ask for Cal Recycle staff to be here. They're literally like all running crazy right now with all the last minute amendments to bills, etc. And unfortunately, because I've been literally working until 10 at night and dealing with bills and so forth, and was up at 7 this morning, 6:30 doing the same. I'm just going to go off the top of my head. And maybe Commissioner Ward, if you could pull up on your screen, and I'm sorry I didn't warn you about this, but pull up on your screen that the sheet we had on the scorecard of our recommendations in the bills, because I think we could just go through those together. And somebody could let Ted share his screen. I will start with the big recommendations that we needed to make were on defining what is compostable and what is recyclable. And what is recyclable right now is being discussed in SB 343. SB 343 is by Senator Ben Allen. There's a lot of co-authors on it. There's been a lot of refinements to that bill, and the industry did not like self-certifying that they were meeting the criteria of 60% of the recycling centers collecting their material and recycling it. Oh, thanks. If we could expand that. Perfect. Thank you. So we'll start again with SB 343. That is, there's a letter that came in yesterday from the Association of Plastics Recyclers that they're opposed, that they have an issue with a bill on recycled content for bags that somehow they feel conflicts. I can say that the waste haulers have signed on and been very supportive. Local governments are signing on. The League of Cities has supported it. Association of Counties has supported it. I haven't heard from RCRC yet, but that bill is in the throes of a big debate right now. And where the language landed, as far as got finalized, was CalRecycle is going to do a survey, a characterization study that gets pretty detailed about what comes out of the back end of facilities and truly gets recycled. That's what's going to determine what meets the criteria of recyclability. And that seemed to solve the problem of having businesses self-certify that they were meeting the definition, because they didn't like that. People can sue them on that, and is my understanding. So anyway, the bill is, again, this is to remove the chasing arrow on products and packaging that do not meet the criteria. And it was based on this commission. I would say it's not exactly aligning, but there's been a lot of discussion with CalRecycle and others about what could or could not be done with budgets, et cetera. So that's where that is. It's supposed to be heard in the committee, or I'm sorry, on the assembly floor this Friday is my understanding, as soon as it can be brought up, possibly next week. So that is that. The other bill is 1201, which is defining compostability. I have not been able to track that. If one of you or Commissioner Lapis wants to speak to that one, or somebody else wants to speak to that, Kalpikoff, somebody from Organics, please do.
It's actually the final version of the bill is remarkably close to the commission recommendation in terms of what should be included. There have been tweaks back and forth, and basically a deal reached with all the opponents in the past week. And we can talk about the details maybe after it passes. But basically, it is the commission recommendation. And special thank you to Alex for facilitating that deal in the past week.
All right.
I was still receiving language changes till about a minute ago, so I'm glad where it's headed, Nick. Thank you for all your hard work.
That's great news. And then another recommendation of the commission was to go back to refillables in the beverage program, and that is the Comlager bill, AB 962, and that is, I thought that had already gotten out of Senate and oh yeah, that's old. So I think that is going to the Senate floor, Nick.
It was just put on the special consent calendar on the Senate floor.
Well, that's exciting. So that sounds very positive. Do you want to speak to 1311 Wood? I have not been able to keep up with that one. It's on beverage containers.
I can't say I've been following it too closely, but basically, I don't want to speak without.
Okay, because I really don't know where that is right now, so I couldn't.
It's also on it was also added to special consent, so it's.
Okay. Okay, and then we have the AB 478 did die that was the Ting bill about recycled content and thermoforms and changing the calculation in the bottle bill to address getting more thermoforms out. That one did not make it. You might want to scroll The Bloom bill also, I believe, didn't make it, right? The 1454 on the beverage
It's a
program?
2-year bill.
A 2-year bill, okay. I also did hear that there's a new push for budget language on the some of the urgency requests that we had on the bottle bill. I know Commissioner Don Levy asked me to bring this up. I wasn't getting emails on this until late Friday. I've been not able to, I had to evacuate my home in Tahoe this weekend. That's just, I have not been able to do much with that, but he's asked us to share that that's happening. And apparently, Member Wykowski is working with them on this. That's really all I know. Again, I just don't have unlimited bandwidth for this commission, so I do my best. But hopefully he can be here and share that with everybody, or if we learn more, we'll share it with everybody. Next, let's see, and the right to repair failed. We knew that already. Yeah, and 2-year bills for SB, for the State Agency Buy Recycle campaign to be updated. AJR 4 did pass, that's done, and 881 on exports of plastics, which was one of our strong recommendations as well, is, I believe, going to the governor, correct, Commissioner Lapis?
It needs a concurrence vote, but
okay.
Immediately after that.
Yeah, so that's very good news for those two. So controls on plastic waste exports, our recommendations have done really well there, so very exciting. And is there anything that anybody else wants to bring up or knows of that you would like to discuss right now or share with everyone?
I mean, the other thing that I think is still in play that we've talked about quite a bit is funding for 1383 implementation. It's a little bit of an opaque process for me in terms of where those negotiations are, but hopefully there will be funding to local governments and to for infrastructure development.
All right. Well, if anybody hears anything that you'd like to share with the group, I'm happy to send an email out with the BCC so there's no reply alls. I know. And just making sure everybody's aware of what's happening here at the end of session. Again, we agreed we're not taking positions on individual bills as commission, as with our commission hat on. It's all individual positions once we make our recommendations. All right. I've kind of lost track. Commissioner Ward, I think you're next.
Yeah, I'm just curious, at what point are we going to get feedback from Cal Recycle regarding the recommendations that we made that Cal Recycle might be able to take action? I'd like to have some sort of mechanism where we could hear how to make better recommendations, how to be more effective.
We had invited the director to this meeting, but this meeting, as you know, is right in the thick of the last minute negotiations on all the bills, and it was not a good time. So she has agreed to join us at the next meeting, which was originally scheduled for October 6th. So, but now that we're doing committees of the whole, I don't know if she could make the 15th or not. We can certainly invite her, but that was our hope, was that she could join us, but totally understandable she couldn't today. So we can add that to the agenda, and that would be the next item is agenda 8, unless there's anything else on legislation or something you'd like to share. Okay, then we'll move on to agenda item 8, which is agenda items and discussion of future meetings. So our next meeting will now be on September 15th. And we'll have a committee of the whole from 8 to 10, and then for market development, recycling, and then 10:30, half an hour break, 10:30 to 12:30 for organics. And for now, until we get the legal thing, I'll just say that since they're committees of the whole, it'll still be me chairing with the vice chair, unless we get different reading that it's okay to turn over the gavel, and however you'd like to set it up is totally fine with me. So if anybody has suggestions on that, please you can email the chair and vice chair.
Heidi?
Yeah.
I did pull down my Robert's rules, and actually it says the chair of the body should step down and turn it over to another member. So, you know, to try to keep the committee work separate from the commission. So anyway, that's the first sentence on committee of the whole in my version of Roberts. So, but again, we can get further input from Kawasaki.
Thank you so much for being the parliamentarian. That's just fine with me. So maybe one of the first things on the agenda would be to vote for a chair and vice chair for the committee.
Yeah, or just have start with co-chairs with the two chairs of the existing committee and then sort things out from there.
Sounds good. Sounds real good. Okay.
On the future agenda, I would like to, by the time we meet again as a commission, we'll know the outcome of the legislature. And I think it would be important the bills where we are listed, but they failed, or our 2-year bills, maybe we should take a look again at our policies in the context of the dialogue that went on. I'm thinking about the thermoform specifically, where there was, a long letter that kind of contravened some of our thinking. And I think it might be good to bring up the bills that didn't go forward where we had input and maybe revisit our input.
Great idea. Happy to put that on the agenda, but that would be for the October 6th meeting. Because the committee of the whole, unless those individual bills related to recycling and market development, you guys, the chairs there could discuss putting that on that agenda. And I'll be working with them, I guess, to make sure that agenda gets done, because it's not much time. We have to have it out by Friday. Okay. Well, I think with that, unless there's anything else you want to put on a future agenda, Commissioner Ward?
Just thought I would try to get a determination from the group whether or not there was consensus that I should start drafting a letter for discussion at a future meeting to send to the purveyors of the plastics that are used in single-use products. If they're interested in that.
Well, what specifically would you ask them in the letter?
Well, that is a good question. I was hoping to work with the chair on that, but some of the things are, to what extent are their resins recyclable? To what extent are they conveying recyclability as a value they want to be used by the folks who are using those plastic resins? To what extent are they making sure that they are not mislabeled as compostable? Those would be some of the initial questions, but also I would also question the whole premise of pushing more single-use plastics in California, where we have goals to achieve a 75% recycling rate. Those would seem to be.
And that would be addressed to every manufacturer that makes single-use plastics?
To the 20 manufacturers that are responsible for over 55% of the single-use plastics that are used. Yes.
My thinking is we should invite them to come present to the Committee of the Whole, the Recycling and Market Development Committee, and present what they are doing or have done and timing of addressing the problem of single-use plastics and what they're doing to help us meet these goals. I think, I mean, I don't want to get in, I guess I'm worried about being too detailed in the letter. I just think we need to get them to share what's going on and how we can stop having a morass of material come at us that we can't handle or manage.
My main thought is to start engagement in some degree. I want this something to be that everybody's comfortable with, and we're at a starting point. But if there's interest, then we need to have a process by which we're going to draft that and review.
I would support it. I think you could bring it because it would still be a full discussion item once you draft the letter. And we could even have it on the agenda for the 15th Recycling and Market Development Committee.
I would actually ask that we move towards the 6th, so just a little bit more time to develop it and make sure that it's ready for.
Sounds good. Is there anybody opposed to that? So that'd be an October 6th agenda item for Commissioner Ward to present a proposed letter to the manufacturers of single-use plastics. Okay. Anything else for future meetings? All right, then I think we can move on to agenda item 9, which is the meeting summary and closing. So what we did today was actually quite remarkable. I sit on a board of 7 and we have a hard time agreeing on things on the fly. So to do it with 17, to me, is always extremely impressive, and it means all of us are working together. So thank you again. So we've rejiggered our committees. We have canceled the committee meeting of the 13th of the Market Development Committee. That Market Development Committee is merging with the Recycling Committee, and we're going to have that be a committee of the whole, which will start on September 15th, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., take a half an hour break, and then another committee of the whole for organics, which will be chaired by Commissioner Kalpikoff for the first meeting, and then people can vote if they wanted to change that. But that committee itself hasn't really changed except by adding one more member, which is Commissioner Davis. So with that, unless there's anything else or something else to summarize, I just want to say congratulations. Your investment in time has been extremely useful, extremely impactful. It's making a national difference. We're getting calls from all over the country from the work that you've done, and I think it's incredible to see this many people working together as well as we are. So I want to thank you all again. And I also want to put out a thought that our state has so many fires going right now. Our firefighters have been working literally 35 days straight in unbelievable temperatures, heat and smoke. And I just want to wish everyone out there safety and the best of thoughts for all the firefighters out there trying to preserve our forests and the homes throughout California. With that, thanks so much. We'll see you on the 15th.